The morning frost crunched beneath Sage McKinnon's boots as she made her way along the familiar trail behind her remote cabin in the Yukon wilderness. At 7 months pregnant, she moved carefully, one hand resting on her swollen belly while the other gripped her walking stick. The December air bit at her cheeks, but she refused to give up her daily walks. They were her moment of peace, in a world that had grown increasingly lonely since her husband's deployment overseas. The trail wound through towering pine trees, their branches heavy with fresh snow. Sage paused to catch her breath, leaning against a thick trunk. That's when she noticed something unusual: deep claw marks in the bark, fresh and raw, unlike anything she'd seen in her 3 years living here. Her heart quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. As a wildlife researcher specializing in bear behavior, she knew better than to let fear cloud her judgment. A twig snapped somewhere behind her. Sage turned slowly, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Through the trees, she spotted a massive shape, a grizzly bear standing upright against a pine tree about 50 feet away. But something was off. The bear wasn't displaying typical aggressive behavior. Instead, it was moving its paws in an almost deliberate pattern, watching her intently. Sage's mind flashed back to her research days at the wildlife sanctuary, where she'd worked with a remarkable bear named Luna, who had learned basic sign language. This bear's movements seemed eerily similar. As she watched, frozen in place, the bear repeated the same pattern: paw to chest, then out, then down. A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the cold. Those weren't random movements. They looked like the sign for danger. Winter winds whispered through the trees as Sage stood there, her baby kicking inside her as if sensing her tension. The bear's dark eyes held hers, and in them she saw something she'd never expected to see in the wilderness: intelligence, urgency, and what looked unmistakably like concern. The bear's movements grew more insistent. Its massive paws swept through the air again, this time adding new gestures, pointing behind her, then making a crushing motion. Sage's scientific mind warred with her instincts. This couldn't be happening. Yet she couldn't deny what she was seeing. The bear took 3 steps closer, and Sage's muscles tensed, ready to flee, despite knowing she couldn't outrun a grizzly, especially not in her condition. But the bear stopped, dropped to all fours, and let out a soft whine that seemed almost frustrated. A distant crack echoed through the forest, like ice breaking. The bear's head snapped up, its ears swiveling. It made the sign for danger again, more frantically this time, then pointed urgently up the slope behind her. Sage turned slowly, scanning the snowy incline. At first, she saw nothing unusual in the white expanse. Then she noticed it: a network of hairline cracks spreading through the snowpack, barely visible but growing with each passing second. Her blood ran cold as realization hit her. Avalanche conditions. The sound came again, louder this time, like thunder trapped beneath the snow. The bear lunged forward, not toward her but past her, its huge body surprisingly graceful as it moved. It stopped 20 feet ahead, turned back, and made another sign she recognized from her research days: follow. The gesture was unmistakable, the same one she'd taught Luna years ago when they'd worked on basic commands. Sage's mind raced. Everything she knew about wildlife behavior told her this was impossible. Bears should be in hibernation this time of year. They certainly shouldn't be using sign language or trying to help humans. Yet here was this massive creature, deliberately trying to communicate with her, trying to lead her away from what her trained eye now recognized as a deadly hazard. Her baby kicked again, harder this time, as if voting on what she should do. The cracking sounds intensified, and small rivers of snow began to slide down the slope. Time was running out. The bear paced anxiously, looking between her and something in the distance she couldn't see. Its movements reminded her so much of Luna that tears pricked at her eyes, despite the gravity of the situation. This bear wasn't just exhibiting unusual behavior, it was trying to save her life. Making her decision, Sage took a careful step toward the bear. The animal's posture relaxed slightly and it turned to lead the way, frequently looking back to ensure she was following. As they moved through the forest, Sage noticed they were heading toward lower ground, away from the unstable snowpack. The bear seemed to know exactly where it was going, choosing a path that was manageable even in her pregnant state. Behind them, the cracking sounds grew into a terrible roar. Sage glanced back to see the entire slope beginning to move, a wall of white death cascading down exactly where she had been standing minutes before. The bear quickened its pace, and Sage followed as fast as she dared, one hand protectively cradling her belly, the other gripping trees for support as she passed them. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the cold air burning her lungs. The baby was moving frantically now, responding to her elevated heart rate and the surge of adrenaline coursing through her body. Through the thunder of the avalanche and her own labored breathing, she heard something else, a low, rhythmic humming. The bear was making a sound she'd only heard once before, during her research with Luna. It was a sound mother bears made to soothe their cubs. They reached a clearing where a massive, fallen tree created a natural shelter, its upturned roots forming a wall against the elements. The bear stopped and made another sign, "Stay," before positioning itself between Sage and the oncoming avalanche. Sage ducked into the shelter of the roots just as the first wave of snow rushed past them. The bear's huge body acted as a shield, its fur covered in white as chunks of snow and ice flew past. In that moment, as the world turned into a chaos of white and thunder, Sage's mind flashed back to 6 years ago, to the day she first met Luna at the wildlife sanctuary. The young bear had been rescued after her mother was killed by poachers, and everyone said she was too traumatized to rehabilitate. But Sage had seen something in those eyes, an intelligence and gentleness that defied conventional wisdom about wild animals. Over months of working together, Luna had learned to communicate through simple signs, showing that bears were capable of far more understanding than anyone had believed possible. The avalanche seemed to last forever, though it was probably only minutes. When the rumbling finally subsided, Sage peered out from behind the root wall. The landscape had been transformed. Trees were bent and broken, and a thick blanket of snow covered everything. The bear shook itself, sending a shower of snow in all directions, then turned to face her. In the sudden quiet, their eyes met again, and Sage gasped. There, on the bear's chest, was a distinctive white marking in the shape of a crescent moon, exactly like Luna's. "Luna?" Sage whispered, her voice shaking. "Is it really you?" The bear's response was immediate. It made the sign for yes, the very first sign Sage had taught her all those years ago. Tears froze on Sage's cheeks as Luna moved closer, making the gentle humming sound again. Questions flooded Sage's mind. How had Luna found her? Why wasn't she hibernating? How had she known about the avalanche danger? But before she could process any of this, a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. The stress and exertion had taken their toll. She was having contractions. Luna sensed her distress immediately, moving closer with obvious concern in her eyes. Sage breathed deeply, trying to stay calm, but another contraction hit, stronger this time. She was only 7 months along. This couldn't be happening, not here, not now. Sage fumbled for her satellite phone with trembling fingers, only to find it crushed from her fall during their escape. The closest neighbor was 5 miles away, and her husband Marcus was stationed at a military base in Afghanistan. The reality of her situation crashed over her like another avalanche. She was alone in the wilderness in premature labor with only a bear as her companion. The absurdity of it almost made her laugh, but another contraction stole her breath. Luna's behavior changed instantly. The bear began making a series of rapid signs that Sage recognized from their training days. Help, follow, hurry. Then Luna did something entirely new, combining signs in a way she'd never done before. She made the sign for baby, followed by danger, then cave. Sage's scientific mind, even through the pain, marveled at this complex communication. Luna wasn't just remembering isolated signs, she was creating sentences, conveying complex thoughts. You know somewhere safe. Sage gasped between contractions. Luna nodded, another human gesture she'd learned years ago. The bear's eyes held such intelligence and determination that Sage found herself trusting her old friend completely. She had no choice anyway. The contractions were getting stronger and closer together. Using the fallen tree for support, Sage pulled herself to her feet. Luna immediately moved beside her, offering her massive body as a support. The bear's fur was thick and warm, and Sage leaned against her, grateful for the help. They began moving slowly through the transformed landscape, with Luna carefully choosing the easiest path through the snow-covered terrain. As they walked, memories flooded back to Sage. Long days at the sanctuary, teaching Luna basic signs, watching the young bear's intelligence blossom. She remembered the day Luna had first combined 2 signs to ask for more fish, surprising everyone at the sanctuary. She remembered the painful day 3 years ago when they'd released Luna back into the wild, believing it was best for her. Sage had cried for weeks afterward, missing their special bond. She'd never imagined they'd be reunited like this. The contractions were coming every 6 minutes now. Through the pain, Sage noticed they were following an old game trail she'd never seen before. Luna was leading her deeper into the forest, away from the usual hiking paths. The bear seemed to be following some sort of scent trail, her nose occasionally twitching as she checked their direction. Suddenly, Luna stopped and made an urgent sound. Through the curtain of gently falling snow, Sage saw what had caught the bear's attention. Dark shapes moving through the trees ahead. Her heart nearly stopped when she realized what they were. Wolves. A pack of at least 6 wolves stood between them and wherever Luna was trying to lead her. The alpha wolf stepped forward, hackles raised, teeth bared in a snarl. Under normal circumstances, wolves would never challenge a full-grown grizzly, but the avalanche had likely disrupted their hunting grounds, making them desperate. Luna rose to her full height, 9 feet of protective fury, and let out a roar that shook snow from the nearby branches. She positioned herself squarely between Sage and the wolf pack, her message clear. To get to the pregnant woman, they'd have to go through her first. The wolves hesitated, but hunger made them bold. 2 younger wolves began circling around them, looking for an opening. Luna's eyes tracked their movement, her body tense but controlled. Then she did something that left Sage breathless with amazement. She began making the sign for friend over and over, directing it at the alpha wolf. It was the same sign they'd used at the sanctuary when introducing Luna to new animals. The alpha wolf stopped its advance, head tilting in obvious confusion at this strange behavior. Luna continued signing, then slowly lowered herself to all 4s, still keeping herself between Sage and the pack. The alpha's ears twitched forward with interest, its aggressive stance softening slightly. In that moment of hesitation, a distant howl echoed through the trees, the call of a moose somewhere in the valley below. The wolves' heads all turned toward the sound of easier prey. After what felt like an eternity, the alpha turned away, and the pack melted back into the forest, choosing to pursue the moose rather than face this strange bear and her human companion. Sage released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, then doubled over as another contraction ripped through her. This one was different, more intense, more urgent. She felt a warm gush of fluid running down her legs. Her water had broken. Luna's reaction was immediate and surprising. The bear began pacing in tight circles, making distressed sounds, then suddenly stopped and started digging through the snow with powerful strokes. After a few moments, she uncovered what looked like a small leather bag, partially buried beneath the white powder. With incredible gentleness, Luna picked it up in her teeth and brought it to Sage. Sage's hands shook as she took the bag, recognition hitting her like a physical blow. It was her old medical kit from the sanctuary, the one she'd lost during a storm last winter while tracking animal movements. Luna must have found it and kept it safe all this time. Inside, she found basic first aid supplies, including clean gauze and emergency blankets. The bear's foresight was almost beyond comprehension. Another contraction seized her, and Sage couldn't hold back a cry of pain. Luna pressed close, offering her warmth and support as they continued their journey. The bear's fur was matted with snow, but her massive body provided a welcome windbreak against the bitter cold. They moved slowly through the deepening twilight, every step a battle against pain and exhaustion. Through the haze of contractions, Sage began to notice changes in their surroundings. The trees were thinning out, giving way to rocky terrain. Luna led her toward a cliff face, following what appeared to be a game trail. As they drew closer, Sage saw what Luna had been heading for all along: a cave entrance, partially hidden behind a curtain of icicles. But it wasn't just any cave. As Luna guided her inside, Sage's breath caught in her throat. The walls were covered with ancient pictographs, red and ochre handprints, drawings of animals, and what looked like early attempts at written language. This was the lost cave system she'd been searching for during her research, the one local indigenous elders spoke of in their stories about a time when humans and animals shared a deeper connection, when they could understand each other's languages. The cave was surprisingly warm, protected from the bitter wind. In one corner, Sage saw what made her heart skip: a nest of sorts, made from dried grasses and soft moss, clearly prepared with purpose. Luna had been planning for this, perhaps for months. The bear made a series of urgent signs: stay, safe, help. Then she did something extraordinary. She combined signs in a way that told a story. She showed how she'd been watching over Sage since returning to these mountains, how she'd sensed the coming avalanche through changes in the air pressure, how she'd prepared this place for an emergency. Sage barely had time to process this remarkable communication before the strongest contraction yet doubled her over. She stumbled toward the nest, Luna supporting her weight. As she sank into the soft bedding, she realized, with a mix of terror and awe, that she was about to give birth in a sacred cave, attended by a bear who knew sign language. The next few hours passed in a blur of pain and primal instinct. Luna never left her side, offering comfort through gentle humming sounds and steady presence. When the contractions reached their peak, the bear positioned herself behind Sage, creating a warm backrest of fur and muscle. Each time Sage cried out, Luna responded with soothing vibrations that seemed to resonate through her entire body. Through the pain, Sage's scientific mind noted details that seemed impossible. Luna timing the contractions with deliberate gestures, using sign language to encourage her to breathe, even demonstrating breathing patterns herself. The bear's understanding of human childbirth went far beyond mere animal instinct. It was as if she had access to some ancient wisdom, some deep connection between species that modern humans had forgotten. As the northern lights began to dance across the sky outside the cave entrance, casting ethereal colors through the curtain of icicles, Sage felt the final stage of labor beginning. Luna sensed the change too, moving to a better position to help. The bear made a new sign, one Sage had never taught her. Hands crossed over her heart, then opened like a flower blooming. Somehow, Sage understood its meaning. Courage. The cave walls seemed to pulse with the energy of countless generations, the ancient handprints glowing faintly in the aurora's light. A particularly bright burst of green illuminated a pictograph that made Sage's heart stop. It showed a woman giving birth, attended by a bear standing upright. The image was thousands of years old, yet it could have been painted yesterday. History wasn't repeating itself, she realized. It was revealing a truth that had always existed, a connection between species that went beyond science's current understanding. With the next contraction, something extraordinary happened. As Sage cried out, Luna began to make a series of sweeping gestures with her paws, signing directly to her unborn child. The movements were fluid and complex, unlike anything they'd practiced at the sanctuary. Through her pain, Sage recognized fragments of meaning: welcome, protect, teach, love. The bear was communicating with her baby, promising to be its guardian, just as she had been Sage's. The auroras intensified, filling the cave with shifting ribbons of light that seemed to dance in rhythm with Sage's contractions. Luna's humming grew louder, harmonizing with the ancient resonance of the cave itself. The pictographs on the walls appeared to move in the flickering light, telling stories of a time when the boundary between human and animal was more permeable, when such partnerships were not miracles but natural law. Sage felt a pressure building, an overwhelming urge to push. Luna quickly retrieved more clean gauze from the medical kit, laying it out with surprising dexterity. The bear's movements were precise and purposeful, as if she'd done this before. Perhaps she had. The pictographs suggested this cave had witnessed similar scenes throughout history. Between contractions, Sage's gaze was drawn to a particular section of the cave wall, where the flickering auroras illuminated a series of interconnected symbols. She recognized elements of modern sign language in the ancient markings, the same gestures Luna used, preserved in ochre and red clay for thousands of years. Her academic mind raced with the implications even as her body worked to bring new life into the world. This wasn't just a cave. It was a record of an ancient system of communication between species, a dictionary of sorts, preserved through generations of bears and humans working together. The next contraction brought Sage back to the present moment with overwhelming force. Luna positioned herself at her feet, making the sign for push with urgent intensity. The bear's eyes held such intelligence and determination that Sage found herself completely trusting this extraordinary creature with her life and her babies. As she began to push, Luna started a new pattern of movements, signing to the cave itself, her paws weaving patterns in the air that matched the rhythm of Sage's labor. The cave seemed to respond, the aurora's light pulsing in synchronization with Luna's gestures. The ancient handprints on the walls began to glow with an inner light of their own, casting warm reflections on the snow outside. Sage felt energy flowing through her body, not just her own, but something older, something that connected her to every woman who had ever given birth in this sacred space, to every bear who had ever served as guardian and midwife. She pushed again, feeling the baby move lower. Luna's humming reached a crescendo, and the bear began to weave her massive body in a gentle swaying motion, signing continuously now. Not just individual words, but entire stories, promises, blessings. The movements seemed to draw power from the cave itself, each gesture leaving traces of light in the air like the aurora above. Through the haze of effort and pain, Sage noticed something astonishing. The baby was responding to Luna's signs, moving in rhythm with the bear's movements. She could feel her child reaching out, not in the random movements of normal labor but with purpose, as if already understanding this ancient language of gesture and intent. The connection between species wasn't just historical. It was being born anew, quite literally, in this moment. The final stage of labor hit with overwhelming intensity. Luna moved with incredible speed and gentleness, positioning herself to catch the baby with her massive paws held exactly as they needed to be, cushioned with the clean gauze from the medical kit. The bear made one final sign, combining gestures Sage had never seen before, a movement that seemed to encompass past, present, and future, a blessing that transcended species and time. With a final tremendous push, Sage felt her baby emerge into the world. The cave erupted with light, the auroras outside intensifying to an almost blinding brightness. Luna caught the infant with impossible tenderness, her huge paws as gentle as any midwife's hands. The bear immediately began cleaning the baby with the medical gauze, her movements precise and practiced, while making soft humming sounds that seemed to calm the infant before it could cry. The baby, a girl, opened her eyes for the first time, and Sage gasped. Her daughter's eyes held an unusual marking. A tiny crescent moon, mirroring Luna's chest marking, seemed to shimmer in her left iris. But more remarkable was what happened next. As Luna carefully passed the baby to Sage, the newborn lifted her tiny hand and made a clear, deliberate gesture, the sign for hello. Sage's scientific mind reeled at the impossibility of it, but there was no denying what she'd seen. Her daughter, not even minutes old, had used sign language. Luna's reaction was immediate and joyous. The bear made the sign back, then began a complex series of movements that Sage somehow understood, told the story of her own birth in this very cave generations ago. The pictographs on the wall suddenly made new sense. They weren't just historical records, they were prophecies, showing the recurring pattern of human-bear partnerships through time. As Sage cradled her daughter, Luna retrieved something else from deeper in the cave, a small wooden box, weathered with age but perfectly preserved. The bear handled it with reverence, placing it gently beside Sage. Inside, she found a journal dated 1892, written by a woman named Sarah McKinnon, Sage's great-great-grandmother. The pages told of a similar birth in this cave, assisted by a bear who could use sign language, marked with a crescent moon. The final entry spoke of a prophecy. Every few generations, a child would be born who could bridge the gap between humans and animals, helped by a guardian bear who carried the moon's mark. The baby made another sign, protect, and Luna responded with a series of gestures that made the auroras dance and swirl. The ancient pictographs began to shift and change, revealing new layers of meaning. They showed a timeline of chosen children through the ages, each born in this cave, each with a bear guardian, each marked with the crescent moon. These special children had gone on to become bridges between the human and animal worlds, helping to maintain the delicate balance of nature. Sage's daughter, whom she knew now must be named Luna, after both her protector and the celestial body that had marked them all, began to glow softly in the aurora's light. The original Luna, her bear guardian, made a series of signs explaining that the child would grow to understand all animal languages, not just signs, and would help heal the growing rift between humans and the natural world. The cave itself seemed to pulse with approval, the ancient handprints now clearly visible as belonging to other mothers through time who had experienced this same miracle. Each had left their mark, their stories preserved in ochre and stone, waiting for the next chosen child to be born. Sage realized that her own scientific work with Luna at the sanctuary hadn't been coincidence. It had been preparation for this moment, guided by forces older than human memory. Outside, the storm had completely cleared, revealing a full moon directly overhead. Its light streamed into the cave, creating patterns that matched the pictographs perfectly. Luna began teaching the baby more signs, and to Sage's amazement, her newborn daughter followed each one perfectly, already showing an innate understanding of this ancient form of communication. The bear's movements became increasingly complex, weaving together signs that told of future challenges the child would face: climate change, habitat destruction, the growing disconnect between humans and nature, and the crucial role she would play in addressing them. Sage noticed that her satellite phone, previously crushed, had somehow repaired itself and was now working. But before she could reach for it, both Luna's, bear, and baby made the sign for wait. There was more to learn, more to understand about this ancient legacy they were now part of. The bear began showing them both signs that had been lost to time, a complete language that had once allowed all species to communicate freely. The baby absorbed every movement, her tiny hands mimicking each gesture with perfect precision, while the auroras above painted the sky with the same patterns Luna was teaching. As the night deepened, more animals began to gather at the cave's entrance, drawn by some unseen force. A pair of wolves, the same pack from earlier, approached cautiously, their aggressive behavior replaced by reverence. A snow leopard, rarely seen in these parts, perched on a nearby rock. Ravens circled overhead, their calls forming an otherworldly chorus. Each animal, in turn, approached the newborn, offering their own forms of communication, subtle movements, sounds and gestures that the baby seemed to inherently understand. Luna explained through an intricate series of signs that this gathering was part of an ancient ceremony, one that hadn't taken place in over a century. Each animal was pledging to protect and teach the child in their own way. The wolves would show her strategy and family bonds, the leopard would teach stealth and independence, and the ravens would share their knowledge of aerial patterns and weather prediction. Most importantly, they were all acknowledging her role as a future bridge between their worlds. Sage watched in awe as her daughter responded to each animal with appropriate signs, some of them so ancient they weren't recorded even in the cave's pictographs. The baby's crescent moon marking seemed to shimmer with its own light now, resonating with similar patterns Sage began to notice in the gathered animals. Subtle markings that had always existed but had never been understood for what they were, signs of an ancient, interconnected network of species communication. The original Luna began to share more of her own story through signs, revealing that she had been born in this same cave 3 generations ago. Her unusual intelligence and ability to learn sign language at the sanctuary hadn't been a coincidence. She had been waiting for Sage, knowing their paths would cross. Every seemingly random event in both their lives had been leading to this moment, this birth, this renewal of an ancient covenant between species. As if responding to this revelation, the cave walls began to shift again, new pictographs appearing alongside the old ones. Sage realized they were recording this very night, this very gathering, adding their story to the ancient timeline. Her scientific training warred with what she was witnessing, but the evidence was undeniable. The boundaries between past and present, human and animal, known and unknown, were far more fluid than modern humanity had imagined. The baby, young Luna, began to cry for the first time, a sound that triggered an extraordinary response. Each animal added their voice in harmony, the wolves' howls, the leopard's purr, the raven's calls, and original Luna's deep humming. The sounds combined into a complex melody that seemed to make the aurora borealis dance more vigorously. The cave itself appeared to sing, ancient reverberations joining the chorus. Baby Luna's cries shifted to match the harmony, her tiny voice somehow containing all the others within it. Sage felt a warm sensation at her chest and looked down to discover a familiar marking appearing on her own skin. A crescent moon, matching her daughter's and Luna's, glowing softly in the aurora's light. She understood now that she too had been chosen, not just as a mother but as a guardian of this ancient knowledge. Her years of scientific research had given her the tools to document and protect these discoveries, to help bridge the gap between modern scientific understanding and ancient animal wisdom. Original Luna made a series of urgent signs, explaining that time was growing short. The modern world needed to be prepared for what was coming: climate changes, natural disasters, ecological shifts that would require cooperation between all species to survive. Baby Luna's birth was just the beginning. She would be the first of a new generation of children born with the ability to communicate with animals, but she would need protection and guidance to fulfill her destiny. The bear retrieved another object from deep within the cave, a crystal that seemed to capture and amplify the aurora's lights. Through signs, she explained that it was a key to understanding the ancient language system, one that would help Sage translate the cave's pictographs and teach others. But it came with a warning. This knowledge had to be shared carefully, gradually, with those who would understand its importance without seeking to exploit it. Suddenly, the sound of helicopter rotors cut through the harmony. Search and Rescue had finally noticed the avalanche and were checking the area. The gathered animals began to retreat, each making one final gesture toward baby Luna, promises of future teachings and protection. Original Luna quickly made a series of signs explaining that she would need to appear to return to the wild, to protect their secret until the time was right, but she would always be watching, always be near. Before leaving, Luna performed one final series of signs, more complex than any before. The cave walls blazed with responsive light, and Sage felt knowledge flowing into her mind, understanding of signs she'd never seen, comprehension of animal behaviors she'd never grasped, and most importantly, guidance for raising a child with such extraordinary gifts. She saw glimpses of her daughter's future, young Luna learning to communicate with whales to help them avoid shipping lanes, working with elephants to protect their migration routes, teaching other children who shared similar gifts but didn't understand them yet. The crystal Luna had given her grew warm in her hands, its facets reflecting not just light but what appeared to be scenes from both past and future. Other chosen children through history, other moments when humans and animals had worked together to prevent disaster. She saw her own great-great-grandmother Sarah standing in this same cave, receiving similar wisdom from her bear guardian. She witnessed future moments yet to come, her daughter speaking at the United Nations, demonstrating a new way of understanding and cooperating with the natural world. The helicopter sounds grew closer. Luna made one last sign, a new one that combined love, protect, and return into a single fluid motion. Then she pressed her nose gently to baby Luna's forehead, leaving a temporary mark that slowly faded into the permanent crescent in her iris. The bear touched Sage's hand, transferring final, crucial knowledge: how to access the cave again, how to read the crystal's messages, how to recognize others who shared their gifts. Then she disappeared into the swirling snow, her own crescent moon marking glowing like a beacon before fading into the darkness. Moments later, the rescue team rappelled down to the cave entrance, led by Dr. James Morrison, Sage's colleague from the Wildlife Research Center. Their amazement at finding her safe with a newborn baby quickly turned to astonishment as they noticed the fresh pictographs on the walls, the strange crystal, and the unusual tracks of many different animals leading to and from the cave. "The bears around here," James said, examining the massive paw prints in the snow. "They've been acting strangely all season, more intelligent, more purposeful, almost like they were watching over something." He looked at Sage with questioning eyes. Sage smiled, holding her daughter close as the crescent moon markings on both their skin faded to near invisibility, becoming something that only those who knew to look for them would ever notice. "The animals have always been watching over us, James. We just haven't been paying attention." Baby Luna made a subtle sign against her mother's chest, one that meant secret, combined with time and change. Even at hours old, she understood the need for patience, for letting this knowledge emerge gradually into a world that might not be ready for it all at once. As the rescue team prepared to airlift them to safety, Sage looked back at the cave. In the growing dawn light, she could see that the pictographs had rearranged themselves, now showing new scenes. A mother and child walking among animals, building bridges between worlds. The crystal in her pocket hummed softly, and she understood it would guide them in the years to come, helping them find others like themselves and gradually awaken humanity's lost connection to the animal world. Her satellite phone buzzed. Service had been restored. There was a message from Marcus in Afghanistan. He'd had a vivid dream about a bear protecting his wife and unborn child, and somehow he knew everything was going to be all right. Sage smiled, realizing the connections ran even deeper than she'd imagined. In the distance, a bear's roar echoed off the mountains, not a threat, but a promise. Baby Luna responded with a perfectly formed sign, "Begin." Sage understood that this wasn't just an ending to their incredible night, but the beginning of something much larger. As the helicopter lifted them away from the sacred cave, she caught a glimpse of Luna watching from the tree line, the bear's crescent moon marking briefly visible like a star in the dawn light. The crystal pulsed one final time, showing her a vision of the future. Herself and her daughter standing in this same cave years from now, surrounded by other children and their animal guardians, all wearing the crescent moon mark, all working together to heal the deepening rift between humanity and nature. The ancient prophecy hadn't just been about one child, it was about awakening a new generation of bridge builders between worlds. As they flew over the transformed landscape, Baby Luna made a series of signs that her mother now perfectly understood. The stories were never just stories. The boundaries were never as fixed as we thought. The animals have been waiting for us to remember how to listen. Sage held her daughter close, knowing that their real journey was just beginning. Somewhere in the wild below, a bear who knew sign language was following their flight, protecting their secret until the world was ready to remember what it had forgotten, that the line between human and animal was drawn in sand, not stone, and that the future of both worlds depended on those with the wisdom to cross it. The crystal showed one final image, the cave's newest pictograph, still wet with ochre. A mother and child, marked with crescents, surrounded by animals with lines of light connecting them all. Below it, in an ancient script that Sage could somehow now read, was written, "The moon's children return." The silence ends. The speaking begins. 6 months later. The research station's observation room was quiet except for the gentle tapping of rain against the windows and the soft cooing of baby Luna in her carrier. Sage adjusted the crystal hanging around her neck, now fashioned into an unassuming pendant that drew no unnecessary attention, as she reviewed the latest data on her computer screen. The numbers were extraordinary, though she was perhaps the only one who truly understood why. Animal behavior patterns across the globe had begun to shift subtly but significantly. Wolves were actively guiding lost hikers to safety in national parks. Whales were mysteriously helping small fishing boats navigate around dangerous storms. Elephants were appearing at drought-stricken villages in Africa, showing people where to dig for water. Each incident seemed isolated, explainable by conventional science, but Sage recognized the pattern. The ancient network was awakening. Dr. McKinnon, her research assistant Kai, appeared at the door. "You might want to see this." He held up a tablet showing news footage from a wildlife sanctuary in Thailand. A young girl, no more than 6 years old, was communicating with rescued elephants using gestures that made Sage's crystal warm against her skin. In the corner of the video, barely noticeable, was a familiar crescent-shaped birthmark near the girl's eye. Baby Luna made an excited sign from her carrier, family combined with find and soon. Her gestures had become more complex over the months, and she was already combining signs in ways that even the original Luna hadn't demonstrated. The crystal had shown Sage visions of other children like her daughter, born in different parts of the world, each with their own animal guardians, each bearing the crescent mark. They were awakening to their gifts, and somehow Luna was aware of them all. Marcus, recently returned from deployment, entered the room carrying a stack of files. Since coming home to meet his daughter, he'd been instrumental in helping Sage catalog and understand the changes they were witnessing. His military background provided unexpected insights into patterns and strategies for protecting what they were building. The crescent mark had appeared on his skin too, fainter than Sage's and Luna's, but present, a sign that the gifts could extend to entire families who were ready to receive them. "The cave network is more extensive than we thought," he said, spreading out a map marked with dozens of locations. Each one shows signs of the same pictographs, the same ancient language. They're all connected, forming a kind of communication grid across the planet. He pointed to several spots where unusual animal behavior had been reported. "And look at this. Every site corresponds with the appearance of a child showing enhanced abilities with animals." Baby Luna reached out to touch the map, and the crystal responded with a burst of warm light. Images flashed through Sage's mind. Other caves, other families, other animal guardians. She saw children in the Amazon communicating with jaguars, young ones in the Australian outback sharing thoughts with kangaroos, tiny tots in the African savanna learning wisdom from elephant herds. The network wasn't just reactivating, it was evolving, adapting to the modern world while maintaining its ancient foundations. A familiar scratching at the window drew their attention. Original Luna stood outside in the rain, her fur gleaming silver in the evening light. She hadn't returned to true wilderness after all, instead establishing a territory that kept her close while maintaining the appearance of normal bear behavior. Now, she served as a liaison between the human researchers and the wild animals of the region, though only Sage and her family knew her true role. The bear made a series of signs that caused baby Luna to giggle with delight. Storm coming, big change, time near. Through the crystal, Sage understood the deeper meaning. The changes they were witnessing were just the beginning. A storm of transformation was approaching. Not a physical tempest, but a fundamental shift in how humans and animals could interact, communicate, and coexist. Kai, who had been studying the map intently, suddenly pointed to a pattern none of them had noticed before. The locations of the caves, when connected, formed a perfect crescent moon shape across the globe, and at each point where the crescent touched a continent, reports were emerging of children with unusual abilities, of animals displaying extraordinary behaviors, of ancient cave systems revealing their secrets. "It's like the whole planet is waking up," he murmured, then blinked in surprise as baby Luna made a sign in his direction, one that meant, "Now you understand." The crystal warmed again, and Sage saw that Kai too bore a faint crescent mark, previously invisible, but now gleaming softly in the dim light. The gift was spreading, calling to those who were ready to receive it. Marcus pulled up satellite imagery on his computer, overlaying thermal data with the cave locations. The result was stunning. Lines of energy connected each site, forming a web of communication that had always existed but had never been detected by modern instruments. The crystal showed Sage what the satellites couldn't see: animals of all species moving along these lines, sharing information, maintaining an ancient network that was finally becoming visible to human eyes. Baby Luna suddenly made a series of complex signs that left her mother breathless with understanding. The crescent marks, the caves, the crystal, the gifted children, they weren't just random phenomena. They were part of Earth's immune system, awakening now in response to the growing environmental crisis. Nature itself was reaching out, trying to rebuild the bridge between species that had been broken so long ago. Original Luna pressed her paw against the window glass, leaving a print that glowed briefly with the same energy they'd seen in the cave. The crystal translated her message. The speaking spreads. The silence ends. The healing begins. Sage looked at her daughter, her husband, her colleague, and the bear who had started it all. Each bore the crescent mark now. Each was part of something larger than themselves. Through the crystal, she glimpsed the future unfolding, a network of moon-marked children and their families, working with animal guardians to restore balance to a troubled world. Not through dramatic revelations or public displays of power, but through quiet understanding, patient teaching, and the gradual remembering of what humanity had forgotten. Baby Luna made one final sign before drifting off to sleep. All one family. Outside, a wolf howled, a raven called, and a bear who knew sign language stood guard, while somewhere in the depths of the earth, ancient cave paintings shifted and changed, recording this new chapter in the eternal story of humans, animals, and the bridges between them. 5 years later. The kindergarten classroom fell silent as young Luna McKinnon stepped to the front, her long dark hair tied back with a ribbon that caught the morning light. At 5 years old, she carried herself with an unusual grace, her crescent-marked eyes holding wisdom far beyond her years. Behind her, through the classroom window, the massive shape of original Luna was visible, pretending to forage while actually keeping watch, a sight that had become so common at the small mountain school that neither teachers nor students questioned it anymore. "Today," Luna began, her small hands moving in graceful signs that accompanied her words, "I want to tell you about my friends." As she spoke, a family of deer emerged from the forest edge, approaching the playground fence. A red-tailed hawk circled down to perch on a nearby branch. Even the classroom's pet hamster stopped running in its wheel to watch. The other children leaned forward, drawn by something they couldn't quite explain. 3 of them, Emma, Kai's daughter, and twins Miguel and Maya from the local indigenous community, touched their own crescent marks unconsciously. They were part of what Sage now called the second wave. Children born since that night in the cave, each with their own unique gifts for bridging the human-animal divide. In her office at the newly established Center for Interspecies Communication, Sage watched the classroom scene through the security monitors while simultaneously reviewing data from around the world. The crystal, now integrated into a sophisticated monitoring system designed by Marcus, showed an ever-expanding network of connections. Green lines crisscrossed a digital globe, marking the locations of other crescent-marked children and their animal guardians. The patterns are accelerating, Dr. James Morrison noted, studying the data streams. After witnessing Luna's early development, he had become one of their strongest allies in the scientific community. We've confirmed 28 new births this month alone, each with the mark, each with a corresponding increase in unusual animal activity in their regions. Sage nodded, touching her own crescent mark, which now glowed faintly whenever she was in the presence of others who shared the gift. The crystal had shown her that this was just the beginning. Nature's response to human-caused environmental crisis was gathering momentum. Each new child born with the mark strengthened the ancient network, creating new pathways for healing the rift between species. In the 5 years since Luna's birth, subtle but profound changes had spread across the globe. Wildlife migration patterns had shifted to avoid human conflicts. Marine mammals had begun guiding ships away from pollution zones. Even insects were showing signs of enhanced cooperation with human agriculture, protecting crops while maintaining ecological balance. Most remarkably, other ancient cave systems had begun revealing themselves. Each one contained its own crystal, its own pictographic records, and its own guardian animals. The Thailand sanctuary, where they'd first spotted another marked child, had become a sister research center, specializing in elephant communication. Similar sites had emerged in the Amazon, the Australian outback, and the African savanna. A soft chime from her computer drew Sage's attention to a new report. In the Arctic, a group of marked children had made contact with a pod of whales, establishing the first consistent communication channel with marine mammals. The implications were staggering. Whales, it turned out, had been maintaining their own ancient records of human-animal cooperation, passed down through generations in their haunting songs. Back in Luna's classroom, the morning sharing session had evolved into something extraordinary. As Luna spoke about her animal friends, each child with the mark began adding their own signs, creating a complex symphony of gesture and meaning. The other children watched in fascination as their classmates seemed to glow slightly, their crescent marks shimmering in the morning light. Through the crystal's connection, Sage could see what the regular security cameras couldn't capture: lines of energy flowing between the children, the watching animals, and the Earth itself. It was like witnessing the planet's neural network slowly reactivating, with each marked child acting as a new synapse in Earth's awakening consciousness. Original Luna, still watching from outside, began making her own signs, telling a story that only the marked children could fully understand. It was about the time before the Great Forgetting, when all species shared a common language, when the boundaries between human and animal were fluid and full of possibility. As she signed, the deer by the fence added their own movements, their bodies swaying in patterns that echoed ancient cave drawings. The hawk adjusted its wings in precise gestures that matched the story's rhythm. In her office, Sage felt the crystal pulse with a new vision. She saw her daughter grown, standing before the United Nations, but not alone. Behind her stood hundreds of other marked individuals, each with their animal guardians, each representing a strand in the rewoven fabric of human-animal communication. The vision shifted to show cities transformed by this new understanding. Buildings designed to accommodate both human and animal habitation, transportation systems that respected wildlife corridors, agriculture that worked in true partnership with nature. Marcus entered the office, carrying their second child, a 2-month-old boy whose crescent mark had been visible from birth. The military's final report came in, he said quietly. They're standing down from their initial concerns. The evidence is too clear. This isn't a threat to national security. It's an opportunity for planetary security. Sage smiled, remembering how different things had looked 5 years ago, when they'd first had to decide how to handle their discovery. They'd chosen a path of quiet revelation, letting the changes spread naturally through the births of marked children, Through small demonstrations of enhanced animal cooperation, through gradual shifts in human-wildlife interactions that could be studied and documented by conventional science. A knock at the door introduced a group they'd been expecting, representatives from indigenous communities around the world, each bearing traditional markings that they now realized depicted the same crescent symbol their children carried. These elders had come forward one by one over the years, bringing their own records of the ancient human-animal partnership, helping to bridge the gap between modern science and traditional wisdom. "It's time," said the eldest, a woman whose white hair was tied with leather marked with bear prints. "The children are ready for the next teaching." She held up a piece of bark carved with symbols that exactly matched the ones from Sage's cave. "We have kept these stories safe, waiting for the marked ones to return. Now we can begin sharing the deeper knowledge." Luna's voice came through the classroom monitor, clear and confident. "And that's why we don't have to be afraid of the big changes coming. The animals aren't just my friends. They're everyone's friends. We just forgot how to talk to them for a while, but we're remembering now." As if in response, a chorus of animal sounds rose from outside. Wolves howling in the distance, birds calling from nearby trees, the deep rumble of original Luna's voice, and something else, something deeper, like the earth itself humming in harmony. The crystal showed Sage one final vision. Her great-great-grandmother Sarah standing in that sacred cave, receiving the first prophecy of the marked children, watching through time as her descendants helped spark the great remembering. The crescent marks on everyone in the room began to glow softly, resonating with this ancient song of renewal. Through the crystal, Sage could feel similar gatherings happening around the world, marked children and their guardians, both human and animal, joining in a symphony of reawakening that was only beginning to reveal its true power and purpose. 10 years later, the great amphitheater, carved into the living rock of the mountain, hummed with anticipation. 15-year-old Luna McKinnon stood at its center, her crescent mark glowing brilliantly in the dawn light. Around her, rising in concentric circles, sat over 1,000 people, scientists, indigenous elders, government officials, and hundreds of marked children and their families. But they weren't alone. Bears lounged in specially designed alcoves, wolves sat alert in family groups, eagles perched on carved posts, and even a family of mountain lions rested comfortably among the human attendees. This was the first World Congress of Interspecies Communication, though much of the real work had been done in the decade leading up to it. Luna, now a teenager but carrying herself with the grace of an old soul, raised her hands to begin the opening ceremony. As she signed, her gestures were repeated by both humans and animals throughout the amphitheater, creating waves of movement that matched the aurora-like lights dancing in the sky above, a phenomenon that now appeared whenever large groups of marked ones gathered. 15 years ago, Luna began, her voice carrying clearly while her hands wove the complex signs of the expanded animal language. "I was born in a sacred cave during an avalanche, helped into this world by a bear who remembered our ancient connections. Today, we are over 10,000 marked ones across the globe, each with our animal guardians, each part of the great remembering." In the front row, Sage watched her daughter with pride, the crystal around her neck pulsing warmly. Original Luna, now showing signs of age but still magnificent, sat beside her, making occasional signs to add depth to her namesake's words. The bear's fur had whitened around her muzzle, but her eyes were as bright as ever, and her crescent mark glowed with undiminished power. The changes of the past decade had been profound but subtle. Cities had gradually redesigned themselves to accommodate wildlife corridors. Farming had transformed through partnerships with insects and birds. The oceans were healing thanks to cetacean guidance of human activities. Climate change, while still a challenge, was being addressed through unprecedented cooperation between species. Marcus, now running the military's new interspecies peacekeeping division, sat with their younger children, 8-year-old twins Sarah and James, both marked ones who specialized in communication with marine mammals. Behind them sat Kai and his family, including teenage Emma, who had become one of the leading youth advocates for animal rights and environmental protection. "But we face a new challenge," Luna continued, her signs growing more complex. "The Earth itself is trying to speak to us through the crystal network. The animals have always understood these messages, but now we must learn to listen too." She gestured to the massive screen behind her, where data from the global crystal grid showed patterns of energy moving through the planet's ley lines. Dr. James Morrison, now director of the International Institute for Interspecies Studies, stepped forward to explain the scientific implications. The crystals aren't just communication tools. They're part of Earth's nervous system. The marked ones aren't just translators between species. They're synapses in a planetary consciousness that's trying to fully awaken. As if, in response to his words, the ground trembled slightly, and the crystals worn by all marked ones present began to pulse in unison. The animals in the amphitheater grew alert, and Luna's hands moved in signs that seemed to flow through her without conscious thought. Ancient symbols combining with new gestures to form a language that was simultaneously old and new. Through their shared connection, every marked one present received the same vision: Earth from space, wrapped in a network of light that pulsed like neural pathways. They saw how every marked child born strengthened this network, how every successfully bridged communication between species helped heal the planet's damaged consciousness. They witnessed possible futures, some dark with continued separation, others bright with the promise of full reconnection. The vision shifted to show them something else. Beneath the world's oceans, in the depths of ancient caves, at the hearts of old-growth forests, new crystals were emerging. The planet itself was responding to the reawakening, creating more tools for communication and healing. But there was urgency in the message, too. A sense the time was crucial, that the balance could still tip either way. Luna's young brother James suddenly stood, his hands moving in signs that combined whale song patterns with wolf pack signals. "The ocean crystals are calling," he announced, his voice trembling with excitement. "The whales say it's time for the deep knowledge to surface." On the screen, satellite imagery showed unusual light patterns emerging from the Mariana Trench, the Great Barrier Reef, and other marine locations. Sarah, his twin, added her own signs, incorporating bird migration patterns into the ancient language. The air crystals are awakening too. The eagles say the sky wants to remember its old songs. Weather satellites showed unprecedented aurora patterns connecting the planet's magnetic poles. Original Luna rose to her full height, her aged but powerful form commanding attention. She began a series of signs that even Sage had never seen before, a communication that seemed to draw on something deeper than memory, something coded into the very essence of life on Earth. The other animal guardians joined in, each adding their own ancient wisdom to the message. Through the crystal network, their combined knowledge flowed into every marked one present. Earth had always been aware, had always been trying to communicate with its children, both human and animal. The great forgetting had been painful but necessary, a time of separate development that would make the eventual reunion even stronger. Now, with the marked ones serving as bridges, with the crystals amplifying Earth's voice, with ancient wisdom joining modern understanding, a new chapter was beginning. Young Luna's voice rose with passion as she translated this message for the non-marked ones present. "We stand at a crossroads of species, of time, of consciousness itself. The Earth isn't just our home. It's a living being that has been waiting for us to grow enough to join its conversation. The animals never forgot this truth. The marked ones are here to help humanity remember, and the remembering has only just begun. 20 years later, the sacred cave where it all began had transformed. Its walls now pulsed with bioluminescent crystals, each one a node in Earth's awakened neural network. Sage, her hair now streaked with silver but her eyes bright as ever, stood beside her daughter Luna, now 35 and a leading figure in the global interspecies community. Original Luna, in her final years but still majestic, rested nearby, her white fur gleaming in the crystal light. They weren't alone. The cove, once a hidden sanctuary, had become the heart of something larger, a vast complex of natural and constructed spaces where humans and animals gathered to share in the great work of planetary healing. Through the cave's expanded entrance, they could see the valley below, where the landscape had been transformed by 2 decades of interspecies cooperation. Living buildings grew from the earth, their structures designed through collaboration between human architects and animal engineers. Birds and insects had helped cultivate hanging gardens that filtered the air and provided food. Wolf packs patrolled the perimeters alongside human rangers, their shared language of signs and sounds creating an impenetrable security system that needed no walls or fences. "Mother?" Luna said, her hands moving in the now universal sign language that combined human gestures with animal movements. "It's time. The Earth crystals are ready for the final awakening." Sage nodded, touching the original crystal that still hung around her neck. Over the years, they discovered that the crystals weren't just communication tools. They were seeds, planted by Earth itself, waiting for the right moment to bloom. That moment had finally arrived. Through the crystal network, Sage could sense similar gatherings happening at sacred sites across the planet. Her son James, now a marine biologist, was leading a congregation of marked ones and whales in the deep Pacific. Sarah, his twin, worked with eagle communities in the Himalayas, preparing for this day. Every marked one, now numbering over 1 million, was in position, each with their animal guardians, each connected through the crystal grid. Original Luna rose slowly to her feet, her age showing, but her spirit strong. She made a series of signs that had become legendary, the same ones she'd used to warn Sage about the avalanche 35 years ago. But now, the signs carried new meaning. Another kind of avalanche was coming, one of consciousness rather than snow, and this time they weren't running from it but helping to guide it. The cave's crystals began to pulse more rapidly, resonating with similar formations around the world. Through their shared vision, they could see the changes happening. Crystals emerging from the ocean floor, growing from mountain peaks, pushing up through the earth in ancient forests. The planet's neural network was manifesting physically, creating visible connections between all living things. Luna's own children, twin 10-year-olds named Aurora and River, entered the cave with their animal guardians. A young bear cub for Aurora, the great-grandchild of original Luna, and a silver wolf for River. The children's crescent marks glowed brilliantly, representing a new generation of marked ones born into a world where the boundaries between species had already begun to dissolve. "Grandmother," Aurora signed, her gestures combining human and animal languages fluidly. "The whales are singing the awakening song. The elephants are drumming it through the earth. The wolves are howling it to the sky." River added his own signs, his wolf guardian moving in perfect synchronization with him. The eagles say the air itself is changing. The bears say the earth is ready to wake up fully. Even the smallest insects are joining the song. Sage felt it too, a vibration that started in the crystal around her neck and spread through her entire body. The cave walls seemed to breathe, ancient pictographs shifting and moving like living things. Original Luna began to glow, her crescent mark pulsing with a light that seemed to come from the heart of the earth itself.